One Piece begins with the GOAT pirate Gol D Rogers, but the first chapter truly belongs to arguably the best pirate currently in the story, Red Hair Shanks. The first showcase of Conqueror's Haki belongs to him, and now we have the Gorosei casually using Conqueror's Haki in very extreme ways, not the norm Conqueror's Haki we've seen in the story in the past. But it really makes you think, is Oda changing the power landscape after the fall of the great Yonkos in Kaido and Big Mom? And you have to understand that even before that, Whitebeard fell pre-time skip during the Marineford War arc. And you think about it, Shanks is the last original Yonko, and he probably was the strongest original Yonko, what we know now. And with Oda bringing in, of course, 2 Delphi User and Blackbeard in that monster into the Yonko scheme, and then of course also adding in Joy Boy himself and Monkey D. Luffy to the Yonko scheme, the man who took down the strongest creature alive, and then bringing in Imu out of nowhere. This will start the new power landscape of the Pirate King level, which is not really new, but I'll talk about that in a bit, that we haven't seen since the days of Roger, Whitebeard, Garp, and Sengoku. But if you think about it, you could even go deeper and say Rox D. Beck, when these characters were in their prime decades ago. So I do want to say this. When it comes to the beginning of One Piece and the death of Roger, that really exposed how strong Shanks is. Well, I got a lot to discuss, so strap in, enjoy the wave of the new era that we're about to touch upon. Now, I literally want to start this video on the first chapter, Shanks losing an arm. Let's be honest here, this was the staple to a lot of things. In the very first chapter, Shanks faces a Sea King and loses an arm. It's very interesting because we have to understand, we found out how strong Shanks was in the future. So to see that going back in the story and seeing Shanks lose an arm to a Sea King, it was definitely very, very puzzling. And obviously Oda has given his reasons and whatnot, but I still think this was definitely a foundation to the most confusing character sometimes when it comes to Red Hair Shanks. A very confusing character. I think the better word would be to use is unpredictable. Like, we see this as a staple when the next time we even see around Shanks, of course, he's on an island that looks exactly like God Valley, and Mihawk pulls up, and of course Shanks says, "You want to fight?" and Mihawk says, "No, you're a one-arm has-been." So him losing his arm has Oda's definitely used that for Shanks' character. It's not like he lost his arm and it never gets brought up. No, it gets brought up time and time again. And I thought it was very interesting when Saturn is talking about Shanks. Saturn, a part of the Gorosei, of course, when they're all having their meeting, they talk about Shanks, and he says Shanks could do a lot of damage, but I don't think his ambition is world conquest. Now, this is very interesting because we all know Shanks somehow has ties to Figarland Garling, who's a celestial dragon, of course, the commander of the God Knights, who are right under the Gorosei. So I definitely thought that was very, very interesting. Now, of course, we do see that Garp had to explain to Luffy that Shanks was just not a regular pirate. This is when we first find out that him being a Yonko and pretty much the top of the top when it comes to pirates, the peak. And of course, Robin is like, wow, I didn't know that Luffy and Red Hair had a connection. And Nami's like, just shocked at how Shanks' influence is so huge. So definitely was a very interesting point when it comes to Shanks' character being, his lore being explained. And I always thought it was pretty cool how Marco the Phoenix and Diamond Jozu, these 2 monstrative Whitebeard pirates who went up against the Roger pirates back in the days, like, these guys are some of the strongest commanders we've seen in the story. And of course, we've seen them, like, see Marco confront, of course, Kizaru. We've seen Jozu confront Mihawk. So to see them hype up Shanks early on, like, just saying that it's strong hockey as always, was always cool to me when Shanks just pulling up on, of course, the Yonko Whitebeard ship. I thought that was always cool. And later on, we even see Whitebeard talks about Shanks and Mihawk's duels and how those are considered legends, but like, it pretty much Whitebeard, it felt like it was yesterday when he was hearing about it. And how he was surprised that Shanks lost an arm, of course, knowing how strong Shanks is. Like I told you, it gets brought up and brought up throughout the story. Like, it's a part of Shanks' character. And then, of course, around the same time, we learn about, of course, another one of Shanks' quotation mark L's, Blackbeard scarring him when he wasn't being careless. This is a Blackbeard before he had the Gurgur no Mi that brought him to the Yonko status. This is Blackbeard before he got the Yama Yama no Mi that brought him to the Warlord status. This is just a base Blackbeard with some mysterious power, with some different body. And Shanks predicted to Whitebeard that Teach is going to take his spot. So I think that Shanks has, how do I say, is a very interesting character when it comes to the way Oda likes to, how to say this, showcase how he looks, the perception of him, and his power in general. And around the same time, I know I'm talking about the same chapter, chapter 434. I know you guys tired probably hearing me talk about this chapter, but I think this chapter is very huge when it comes to Shanks' character, because Shanks dodges Whitebeard's drink, and nobody talks about this. I've seen so many One Piece YouTubers, they don't talk about how this is such a crazy feat. Whitebeard, the world's strongest man, throwing that drink at Shanks, and the fact that he dodged it while still being seated, that to me was always cool. And then goes on to clash the world's strongest man. Like, this chapter was definitely an emotional roller coaster when it comes to Shanks' character. We start off with the high, of course, of him having intense conquers haki, brought back down when it comes to Blackbeard scarring him, and then brought back up when it comes to, of course, clashing with Whitebeard. I told you, super emotional roller coaster. And I think around 100 chapters later, we see Momonga was so shocked that Shanks got into a fight in the New World. Like, the fact that Shanks was getting into a dispute in the New World was so shocking. It had to be explained to him that Shanks was actually just stopping Kaido from fighting Whitebeard. So even when Shanks does fight, there's always a reason. It's never like he's just fighting because he wants to smoke. And then, of course, during the end of the Marineford War arc, Shanks comes and stops Akainu. This is bigger than a lot of people think, because Oda was building up Akainu immensely before Shanks stopped him. You have to understand, this is so impactful, because nobody in Marineford was able to stop him. He took off half of Whitebeard's face, took a huge beating from Whitebeard and was still standing, took on all the Whitebeard Division commanders. And even after the war, you could see him go after Blackbeard, and Blackbeard ran away, even though Blackbeard had the Gerger no Mi and the Yami Yami no Mi. Like, you would think Blackbeard should have some confidence against Akainu. No, Blackbeard's like, nah, I don't want to deal with that right now. And then Aokiji lost during the time skip and lost the battle and his leg, and they fought for 10 days. So Shanks stopping Akainu definitely was Oda building up Shanks to another level. And I thought it was pretty cool during the Ace Whitebeard funeral. Shanks thinks about how Roger would never run or cry, just like how Ace did that, and pretty much showing how different they were when it comes to Shanks and Roger. Shanks always wanted Roger to cry or run, and Roger just wouldn't. So I feel like it just shows you how different these characters are when it comes to dealing with how they are emotionally and how they experience things. Like, Shanks and Roger they do have similar things, but there's a lot of major differences that people don't talk about. And I thought it was pretty cool during, I think it was right after Whole Cake Island, we see Kaido's reaction to, of course, Luffy going to Whole Cake Island and causing damage. We see Blackbeard's reaction saying he's not ready to be a Yonko yet, and we see Big Mom saying this is fake news and she didn't lose. You get these huge reactions for these Yonko, and then we get Shanks' reaction, and like, of course, they're all reacting to Luffy just becoming a 5th Emperor, joining their ranks. And Shanks just casually says, "We will be meeting soon, Luffy." So I thought that was pretty cool, because even cooler after seeing how strong Shanks is, because his reaction was the most tame. And you could argue that he was the strongest of those 4 reacting to Luffy becoming a 5th Emperor. So that was pretty interesting to me, pretty neat. Of course, Shanks then goes to the Gorosei, which this caused some crazy drama, because everyone's like, "Oh, Shanks evil, what is going on with Shanks?" Especially recently with the whole Figarland Garling stuff. Like, the whole Gorosei Shanks meeting is still talked about. He goes to the Gorosei and says, "I want to talk about a certain pirate." And we just know that Roger and Luffy would never do this. So the fact that Shanks did this, Shanks' actions are always unpredictable, in my opinion, in the series, especially knowing the Gorosei power and how immensely how strong those 5 individuals were he was facing were. Like, we saw how the hellish creatures that Sabo was facing in that moment. So I just think that was it gets cooler. The scene gets cooler as you see the Gorosei fight more. And I do want to say this. I think this is the reason why this Shanks actions are like things that Roger, Luffy would never do, and they're so unpredictable, is because Shanks does a lot of things that could be looked at crazy in the current story, but like maybe 200, 400, 500 chapters later, Shanks doing that makes so much sense. Like, he's so future orientated, and I've noticed this when it comes to even warning Whitebeard about Blackbeard, and how Blackbeard actually did what Shanks was warning, like taking over Whitebeard's spot. I think Shanks going to the Gorosei talking about a certain pirate is going to be a major thing when it comes to Blackbeard versus Shanks, and this is in general when it comes to the final war with Luffy involved. Now let's talk about how Shanks was a 6-year Yonko. And if you actually go to the pre-time skip, Shanks was only a Yonko for 4 years, and he obtained the title with 1 arm and had the lowest bounty between Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom. So this is why I say Shanks is so underrated, because even the world government portrayed him as the lowest bounty. He had 1 arm. Like you understand, he's going up against these intense monsters of Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom. The size of these Yonkos are insane. And it makes me really think, like, they're even former Rocks members, guys. So Oda loves keeping Shanks in the shadow. Like, it kind of reminds me of Monkey D. Dragon. Like, Shanks and Dragon always had a similar vibe with these characters, that Dragon was a revolutionary and Shanks was an actual pirate. But I always get the same vibe between these two characters, and moments like this is why. And I always thought it was cool when the Roger pirates were about to go to Laugh Tale, Shanks stayed back to take care of Buggy and his sickness, and said, we will go with our own ship one day. I think that was very cool because now they're two Yonkos and they have a high possible chance of actually getting to Laugh Tale because of their status in the One Piece world. And Shanks saved Buggy in the past, of course, when Buggy ate a Adulthood ability. And I always feel like it's cool how he always has Buggy's back. And I think that friendship is actually interesting because even in the chapter, they're like friends or foes. Like, it's really interesting. And then, of course, the immediate next chapter starts off with Shanks asking Roger a question and then crying after hearing the answer. This is obviously Roger after leaving Laugh Tale. Now, what do I think that Roger told Shanks? Probably what needs to be done in the past and how it's all connected to the future when it comes to the Void Century, and probably has to do with Celestial Dragons and Shanks' ties to Celestial Dragons. And I think that Shanks might have one more huge reveal that relates to what Roger told Shanks, and I can't wait to see what it is, because if I had Shanks crying, our reaction might even be more crazier. And you have to put some respect on Shanks' name because Kaido, the strongest creature alive, put some respect on Shanks' name. Shanks is the only living member that Kaido considers capable of fighting him, which is crazy knowing all the monsters that exist in the One Piece story. Like, he put Odin, Rocks, Roger, and of course Whitebeard, and they're all dead. And then he only had Shanks in there that was living. Wow, 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 insane. And it makes me think, because Kaido, if you look at it, he's defeated, and now there's probably going to be a new strongest creature in Shanks, or was Shanks the strongest from the beginning? That's another topic for another day. And right after Wano, we see Shanks, of course, saying that it's time to go after the One Piece, and many people look at this as, of course, Kaido and Big Mom fell from the Yonko spots, and now is the best time for Shanks to make his move. But I thought it was far from the truth. I feel like he was only after the One Piece once he saw Luffy's Nika form in the bounty poster. But don't forget that Shanks gave Luffy that Delphin ability. Shanks knew that was, of course, Joy Boy's Delphin ability. That's my take. I've always said this, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's a LegendMac hot take right here. And then right after, Shanks, of course, uses Conqueror's Haki to scare off an Admiral and Greenbow, which is just insane to think about. Like, a Yonko using Conqueror's Haki, not even going on the island and scaring an Admiral, is insane. And then right after, Shanks goes up against a 3 billion berry man and Eustace Kid, who just went up against Big Mom with the help of Law, and said, of course, fight me or leave your role Poneglyph. So he still gives a chance. You can't be mad at that. He still gave Kid a warning before, of course, the tragic fate of Kid. Yes, you guys all know what I'm talking about. First of all, let's talk about how Shanks admits his fleet is known for being weak. That's why he actually tries to stop them from fighting Kid, because he knows their power is not that strong. Then let's talk about how Kid states he will destroy Shanks' fleet in 10 seconds. That's a Yonko fleet. If you're able to destroy a Yonko fleet in 10 seconds, like, look how far the Yonko fleet made it in Marineford and Whitebeards. He says he's going to destroy in 10 seconds, in which he actually does with his damned punk, the movie used to, of course, finish off Big Mom. But Shanks sees the 10 seconds into the future, which is insane. Probably the greatest future sight feat we've seen, surpassing, of course, the likes of Katakuri, Luffy, and Kaido. And of course, jumps into action, which shocked Kid. Kid, you can even see Kid's face, like, red hair. Like, he did not expect the captain of the Yonko crew to immediately face him right away. He thought he would have to go through much more obstacles. And then we see, of course, Conqueror's Haki coding Divine Departure, a Roger named attack. If anything, a Pirate King level attack. This is a confirmed, the first ever technically Pirate King level attack, because Gol D Rogers is the only Pirate King, and Shanks is the only one to imitate Roger's moves. So it kind of reminds you of basketball when it comes to Michael Jordan and how he's the GOAT. But let's be honest, Kobe Bryant imitated a lot of Michael Jordan's moves. And Kobe Bryant did some amazing things that are, like, insane, like scoring 81 points in a game, 5 championships. Like, some people, obviously people say that Michael's better than Kobe, but Kobe had our generation like he had our generation shook when it comes to his skill. So I've kind of looked at it as like that. Could Shanks be Kobe, and could Michael Jordan be Gol D Rogers? And then of course we see a great explosion from the damn punk and just Conqueror's Haki, people passing out, and it's an explosion. So yes, it's true. Yeah, it's not just Divine Departure, Conqueror's Haki coding. There is Kid's actual weapon going back on him. Like, you have to admit that too. And then, of course, we saw that even his vice captain was one shot. This is what makes it a little harder to swallow. Like, no Diddy, but like his vice captain killer, like, who's trying to step in and protect him, gets washed too as well. And that's why I think that damn punk definitely had to do with it. Because I think, yes, I know Shanks is wrong. I'm a big Shanks fan. But Divine Departure, Kankasaki coding can take out Kid and Killer at the same time. Like we've seen when it comes to Kaido using Kankasaki coding against Zoro and Law. Yes, it was damaging, but not taking them out. So the fact that Shanks was able to do that, yeah, that's insane. If it didn't have to do with the damn punk, I'll be shocked. And of course, the Kid Pirates surrender the role gifts to Shanks because they don't want their captain and vice captain to die. So the reason why Shanks' Divine Departure is so insane is it's because it's literally Roger's move. He used it against Kozuki Oden. Now, of course, Oden took the hit better than Kid, but think about Kid's a Kankuraki's user just like Oden, and coming off a battle with Big Mom and Kaido and getting a taste of this new level of power. I got a whole Kid video coming soon, guys. Don't worry about that. But let's talk about how Roger and Shanks and how they both chased elite swordsmen and Kozuki Oden, of course, the GOAT swordsman Mihawk, and yet are not known for having the best swordsmanship. Like Kaido even said it best. Roger had no double ability, but his haki is what made him the Pirate King. And if you think about it, Shanks is not, his swordsmanship skill is of course lesser than Mihawk, but Shanks' haki is insane. It makes you think of battles with Garp that Roger had. All I'm thinking is Roger fought not only with a sword, he probably used something else, because you can't just fight a sword and fist together. I know One Piece you can do anything, but still, I think it'd be cool to see Roger use other techniques and some new haki techniques that are not sword related. And if we see Shanks do this against Blackbeard, that will be crazy. And if it's shared with Roger, if Shanks' entire movesets are shared with Roger, named attacks from Roger and Shanks similar, I think you have to put some respect on Shanks' name. It's simple as that. Shanks is changing the power landscape thanks to Roger.